everyone just hears about how expensive houses are, so amongst, people my age are kind of concerned.
I think it'll go to 10 million.
Wow, okay. I think
Yeah.
it's just like a vicious cycle of, not getting a job or not getting enough, renting and then never saving. Hello everyone, my name's Anastasia, and today I was lucky enough to be invited to have a very interesting discussion about the property market with Adam, who is our tax specialist here at Adam & Ahmed & Co. So let's jump straight into it.
All right. So, Anastasia, you're a young person,
Yes.
working hard in the office, just trying to get a start.
Yeah.
You're like, what, first year uni now?
Yeah, just finished first year, yeah.
And you're telling me that you're thinking about buying a property already. That's pretty good.
Yeah, well, I think everyone just hears about how expensive houses are, so amongst, people my age are kind of concerned for our future selves, I guess, yeah.
What's a concern?
I think just hearing about, how most properties are just, $1 million or more are getting people thinking, oh, how am I ever going to be able to afford that once I, finish uni or once I, turn an age where I'd want to buy a house. So,
okay. How many years do you reckon before you'd want to buy a house?
I'd say maybe at around 25-ish, or, when I finish uni in 5 years' time, I'd like to sort of be financially able to put a deposit down. Whether that's realistic or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, isn't it? I mean, when I was a kid, houses were like 80 grand or 100 grand or something. If you said to me at that time, or anyone else at that time, that, an average house is going to be $1 million, like, they would have just thought that you were mad. Yeah,
no, it's definitely a different world. Like, my parents are also very surprised, and they're saying to me, oh, like, make sure you save because, you're operating in a different housing market to us. And yeah.
I don't know if it's actually a different market, because if you, I actually was reading sometimes I keep a bit of a journal, and I was reading an entry that I made in 2006, 2007.
That's cool.
And I was complaining about how the houses were expensive, and I don't think I could afford one. And I wrote in there about how there was a house in Newtown I was looking at, and it was over 500 grand.
Yeah.
I think the agent wanted 517,000, but I was only willing to go to 515.
Right, okay.
And so I didn't end up getting it.
Yeah. Because
of 2 grand.
Yeah, wow.
And now, obviously, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just generational. Like, in a few years' time, maybe $1 million is going to be fine, and people are going to be like, why would you ever not buy it for that price?
I think it'll go to 10 million.
Wow, okay.
But the reason why I say that is because if in the 80s it was, 80 to 100 grand, and then in the, 2015 to 2020 period, it was getting to like the $1 million.
Yeah.
That's like added a zero.
Yeah.
But if you go further back in time, to say the 50s or something, it was like 8 to 10 grand.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a whole zero added to the end. And then if you told anyone at that time period, like if you told someone in the 50s a house is going to be 80 grand, they'd think that you're crazy.
Yeah.
Just like if I say to people, I think it'll be 10 million, people think I'm crazy now.
Yeah.
But that seems to be what's happening. And if you actually have a look at the data with the money supply, like the money supply is always increasing too. Like there's just more money out there.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, like, do you think if people are earning more, do you think that's, making them able to catch up? Like, do you think we'll earn more in the future and that'll make people be able to afford these $10 million homes?
No, not necessarily. I think what actually happens is fewer people can afford a house. But because of I think the issue with the housing is it's actually more of a supply constraint. So when you increase the population, you increase property prices as well. I think there's some stat that it increases, like by a factor of 1.25 or something for the population increase or something. It's not directly correlated.
Yeah.
And then if you don't have a lot of supply of housing, you have a higher population, then there's going to be, like, you are naturally going to create a situation where less people can afford a house.
Yeah.
And, you know, like the people who could afford a house in the past, the types of jobs who could afford a house in the past probably would struggle to afford it now.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't think the income going up is going to solve that problem necessarily.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be able to afford my own house if I had to buy it again today.
Yeah.
Which is pretty scary too.
Yeah, that's like weird to think about. And in economics, actually, I was learning about how the gap is widening between people having really high paying jobs and people having really low paying jobs, and we're missing middle income earners these days. And I think that like proves your point, where certain jobs will be able to afford and keep up and others just will fall behind, and who knows what will happen to them. Like, yeah.
Your parents might have to, buy a house for you now.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. They're like, we've got to get an early start before it keeps rising. So,
yeah, I mean, where would you live? Like, I mean, because they have a lot of apartments.
Yeah.
And there seems to be a lot of supply of apartments, even though apartments are expensive. But, like, what do you think about that?
I think, yeah, like housing and just having your own backyard is like a very precious thing nowadays, because there's just a lot of like high-rise apartments, and I guess that's what people are leaning towards because it's like less maintenance, maybe a bit more affordable, and there's just more of them, so there's more choice. But personally, I've grown up in a house, so I'm, hoping to get a house.
Yeah. What about other people your age? Are they like the same?
I feel like there's a pretty good variety. I know a lot of people, when they first move out, they're just thinking automatically apartment. Like, nobody thinks, oh, my first property is going to be a house. Like, everyone knows they're going to have to go to an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment to rent or something like that. But I'd say a lot of people still want a house like further down the line when they have families or whatnot. But everyone knows they're going to have to go to an apartment or a share home for the first one because it's too expensive to buy outright. Yeah.
But then if you did have an apartment first, would you buy it or would you just rent it?
I mean, I think it'd be smart to buy it, because then if things go well, you can just use it as like an investment once you're done with it. But I think the reality is that you would have to rent, I guess.
That's a tough start then.
Yeah.
And then if you did have a family, I mean, would you, in that situation, would you say be happy to live like really far out, to have a backyard, or would you live in an apartment, or would you just take on a big debt and buy a house?
Yeah, I mean, they're all things to think about. Like, very topical. Yesterday I went to a family's house and they live in Terrigal, and they have a huge property with all this backyard space. You could park like 15 cars in the backyard, and that's what they could afford, and they didn't even think of Sydney to try. So I think it's becoming this problem where you either buy in Sydney and have a mortgage for most of your life, or you just pack up and move further out and have a nice big block of land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do then?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the nature of where I'm going, considering I'm doing commerce and law, I think staying in a close distance to the city is going to have to be what happens. So maybe I'm just going to have to go the mortgage route and just, be locked in for like 30, 40 years. I don't know how long it takes, but I think that's probably what I'd have to do to live in Sydney.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But then you have to also save up the deposit.
Exactly, yeah.
A deposit on $1 million house, if it depends on what, how much the bank lends you. And you need to pay stamp duty too. You might need like $200,000 for $1 million house. But if houses are $10 million, I don't think they will be in the next 5 years. But then you need $1 million.
Yeah, just for the
$1.5 million deposit.
Yeah, which is the starting price now. So you'd have to essentially buy a house in 2022 outright to afford a house in 10, 20 years time.
Yeah.
And how about, I mean, you have young daughters, like are you thinking that you're going to have to start saving for them or like to get property? Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I actually have, I set up an account for them.
Yeah.
Just to put some money into it so that I can give them something to get started. And I thought to myself, I'll give this to them and they'll have a deposit to buy a house, but the pace of the savings in that account is not matching the pace of the growth in the property prices.
Yeah.
And so I started to sweat and think, what shares should I buy and this and that and all the other. And, a lot of the shares that I pick aren't that good.
Yeah.
So what I thought would be better is that since I'm doing this so that they have the money to buy a house, I might as well buy one for them now.
Yeah.
Even if because I've got 3 kids, even if I buy just one, when the time comes and they sell it, and you divide it 3 ways, that's a deposit.
Exactly, yeah.
And
that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's probably a more sensible way of doing it, because at least it's going to track what I am trying to give them the money to buy.
Yeah.
But then when I sell it, I'll have to pay taxes on it, which will eat up, then they'll get maybe 20% or something.
Yeah.
As opposed to a third.
Yeah. It's interesting that, this is something, I mean, I don't know if parents always had to think like this, but it's something that you seriously have to start working on behalf of your kids. Otherwise, it's just impossible for them to start from scratch.
Yeah. I think so. I think that's how it's going. And I think that the people who do own things will own more things, and the people who don't, it's harder to get onto there.
Yeah.
As time goes by. That seems to be the trend.
Yeah.
I think that's the natural trend of how things work. I was watching something where they were showing a stat about how if you keep playing any kind of game, there's always one person in the end who'll end up with everything and everyone else will have nothing. Seems to be how nature works. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And then over time, people do things to sort of fix that so that, like one person doesn't have everything and everyone else is eating leaves and stuff.
Yeah.
But we don't seem to be having that kind of correction occurring for some reason.
No.
I think they sort of try to do it a little bit with inflation, because if you have a lot of inflation, then anyone who has a debt, like when I first started working, there was a partner in the firm I was working at who told me at the time, and I was probably like fairly close to your age, maybe give or take, maybe I might have been 2 or 3 years older than you are.
Okay.
I think I was still at uni actually.
Yeah.
And he told me that he had $1.5 million of debt across his various properties.
Okay.
And I just thought that was just the most enormous sum.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, how does this guy sleep at night with such a massive debt? He has all these properties and he's got this massive debt. And now that's just a normal amount of debt.
Yeah.
He's probably paid that off now.
Yeah.
By now. Like that's the effect of inflation, isn't it?
Yeah.
That $1.5 million is like a lot less now than it was back then.
So I guess to somebody my age, when we hear the word inflation, we just think, things are more expensive.
Yeah.
But what's like if there is any benefit, like what's the flip side of inflation?
I think the benefit mainly is for the government inflation, not really the ordinary person, because when you have inflation, like even say inflation with property prices, if it's your own home, okay, you can sell it and move to another house. But if you have an investment or something, you have to pay taxes. So you end up behind always a little bit.
Oh, right, okay.
Because your gain in dollar terms is considered a profit, which it might not really be.
Right, okay.
I mean, I think if you look at the money supply growth as well, and it might grow by, say, 10% a year or something. If you have savings in the bank and you haven't managed to grow them by 10%, you're behind already. So we don't really benefit. I thought, maybe the benefit might be for people who have a lot of debt. Like me, I've got like a lot of debt, but then the interest rate goes up as well.
Yeah, so you end up paying more back in the end anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that Reserve Bank governor is a fool. Like, I just, Look, he said, "Oh, we won't have any interest rate increases until 2024. If you're a business owner, go out there and do things." So I thought maybe I'll try and do that. I listened to that guy. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And then like they have all this weird data about, the interest rate used to be 7% or 5% or whatever, so it's only going back up to what it was. But what people don't understand is that if you start off at an interest rate of 2% and you go up to 4%, you might say it's only 4%, but what it actually is it's double.
Yeah.
The person who's making the payments, their payments have doubled.
Exactly.
It's not like gone up by 2%, it's gone up by double. If you were paying 2,000, now you're paying 4,000.
Yeah.
And that's actually a big increase when something doubles like that. And then if they continue to increase, it's not... If you start off from a small base and you get to 6%, you're looking at triple.
Yeah.
So it's not small increases.
No, that's very alarming to think about when they can just do that, and it triples everything that you're doing.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you get, if the guy says, the rates are not going to change until 2024, and then in 2022 they double.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially.
Yeah.
That was an unwelcome thing.
No, and especially when he encourages people to, maybe take on more debt because they have the security of not having a higher interest rate, and then he turns around and doubles.
That's right.
What they've done, yeah.
And there's no responsibility for it either. It's not like anything happens to him. I'm sure he's wealthy and enjoying life and all that.
Yeah.
And keeps his job and everything like that.
Yeah.
But it's a disastrous comment to do. I think it's very irresponsible.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing you have to also look out for as well. If you're looking to invest, you can't necessarily trusted voices. Yeah, you can't. I mean, like there's always government intervention in the market and all this other stuff. There are heaps of random factors, so it's hard to track what's going to happen because you don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Like they do things that are counterintuitive all the time. They're trying to increase the interest rates. They're saying, "Oh, keep inflation down" and all that. And they're thinking, well, if we increase the interest rates, people will have less money to buy things. But the fact that things are more expensive also means people have less money to buy things.
Exactly.
That just happens by itself.
Yeah.
All you're doing is like kicking them while they're down. Really.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, spending money and increasing the money supply and making the inflation problem worse. So it just doesn't seem to have been thought through properly. You would have to be very careful about that when you make these types of decisions. You've got to really think, well, if I have to support myself on my own, what am I going to do?
Yeah. And it turns like no-brainer decisions, such as, buying an investment property and having someone rent it, and the rent will just pay off the property for you. Like that just seems like a no-brainer, but I guess it's just making those things even not as effective as you would like.
Yeah. Like you probably, it depends on what you invest in. You might not necessarily have the rent pay off the mortgage.
Yeah.
But you might be better off doing that while you live at home.
Yeah, exactly. Just to get something.
Yeah, because what are you going to use the money for anyway?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have to pay many living expenses.
Yeah, exactly. It's better than just sitting in the bank account, collecting 0.00%. Yeah.
It's true, I think. I mean, this is a good time for you because you don't have as many living expenses.
Yeah.
You'll only get more living expenses.
Exactly.
I remember there was a guy I used to work with. He, when I was a uni student, and he was like a senior manager, and he wanted to get married to this lady, and her parents thought he wasn't good enough, and so wanted him to print out his employment contract to prove his income or something. Anyway, because I was so junior, I happened to be sitting next to the printer because it was the crappiest seat. And I see his employment contract come out. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And he was making like, I don't know, I think it was like $180,000 a year or something.
Okay.
And I was just completely gobsmacked because I was making, I was working 3 days or something so I was making like $15K a year or something.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just thought that was like the most money in the world. Yeah. And I said to him, because we used to have work drinks, and I said to him at work drinks, you know how you're rich? Just started the conversation. He's
Okay.
like, what? How did you know that? I was like, I saw your income and all this. I said, you must have so much money.
Right.
And he said to me, wait until you get a mortgage. Because apparently he said he didn't have that much money. And I was like, how is it possible for you to even spend all of this? I mean, even my savings are going up and I'm making 15K a year.
Yeah.
You're making 180.
Yeah.
You must be,
very, very comfortable.
very comfortable. But he had some kind of mortgage or something, and he didn't have that much money. But that's why I'm saying that at your age now, like, you're probably
get a start on. Yeah.
You're probably quite a bit richer than you realize, just because the expenses aren't there.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely something that not a lot of people my age think about, and they miss opportunities to make smart choices, and they just don't invest their money while they have it. So yeah, that's definitely something to think about for people in my age bracket. Yeah. I think it's just an overall concern about they might not get a job or a good paying job straight out of uni because they don't have experience, and then that kind of falls into a cycle of, if I'm not getting paid enough, how am I going to make a start on getting a house or whatever it is? And then they fall into just renting. But obviously renting means that always money is going out, and it's hard to actually save for a permanent property. So I think it's just like a vicious cycle of, not getting a job or not getting enough, renting, and then never saving. And it's just, I think that's how most people would see it now.
All right, Anastasia, thanks for that. I better get back to it. I know you've got plenty of things to do as well.
Yeah, I have to get started on that saving for the properties. So thanks for having me.